Welcome to the Manage module of the Healthy Relationship and Marriage Education Training. This training module highlights the importance of finding healthy ways to deal with differences. For more information about Manage, review Fact Sheet 1 listed on the module website below, as well as the original chapter, Manage, Dealing with Differences in Healthy Ways, authored by James Marshall, Anthony Santiago, Francesca Adler-Bader, and Ted Futris, and published in the National Extension Relationship and Marriage Education Model. As we review what Manage looks like in relationships, several tools and fact sheets have been developed to help you teach these concepts with your clients. Some of these tools will be referenced later on. If you haven't already printed these materials, you can access them on the website using the links below. Note that page 1 of each tool provides instructions for you to follow as you use the tools with clients. Page 2 can be copied and shared with clients as you see fit. Pause the video to review the fact sheets and tools. When you are ready, press play to continue. Manage focuses on a couple's use of strategies to stay calm, contain their stress response, soothe their partner, listen attentively, make an effort to understand their partner's point of view, accept differences, and forgive one another. Many problems in long-term healthy couple relationships are never completely resolved. Couples simply work to manage them. People in relationships often resort back to how they saw conflict handled in their childhood home, particularly when things get stressful. So people whose parents handled conflict well have a great model for their own relationships. But even people whose parents didn't handle conflict well can learn new ideas for thinking about and managing differences. They can choose to be transitional characters, meaning they can change the way they manage conflict in their own relationships, and they can break any negative cycles. But it takes time, and it takes work. Parents serve as role models for children, for better or for worse. Parents need to understand that children often grow up and repeat the cycles they've seen, so parents need to do their best to model appropriate responses and behaviors so their children can learn better ways of managing problems. You may be wondering what effect parental conflict has on children and why it matters how the parents you work with manage conflict in their homes. Research indicates that witnessing unhealthy conflict between parents can be harmful for children, especially if it is a regular pattern. Conflict between parents can cause children to feel anxious, scared, and sleepless. However, when parents are skilled at talking and managing conflict, their children can benefit. Seeing parents work through differences in a healthy way can help children's current relationships with friends and also helps prepare them to deal with problems in future romantic relationships. For more information that you can share with parents, refer to Manage Fact Sheets 1, Common Myths About Conflict in Relationships, and 2, When Couples Fight, Children Suffer, provided below. Feel free to pause the video now to review these fact sheets. When you're ready, press play to continue. Imagine for a moment you are driving toward an intersection where you see a car coming toward a stop sign really fast. Although you have the legal right of way, you can tell that the other car is not going to stop. If you decide to go through this intersection even though you have the legal right of way, you may end up injured, or worse, dead from the ensuing crash. This is a lot like relationships. Sometimes individuals are so set on being right or having the right of way that they risk wrecking the relationship. Too often our pride and stubbornness get in the way of good judgment. We charge ahead with what we want, even if it's right, and in the process, wreck our relationships. All couples will experience stress, differences, and conflict. These are expected and normal in all romantic relationships. Research shows that all couples have disagreements, but how differences are managed helps determine how well a couple gets along day to day and how likely they are to stay together. Threats affect both our minds and our bodies. We all have triggers or things that feel threatening to us. For example, a trigger might be something as simple as our partner looking at us in an intimidating way or saying something like, "Are you ever going to do anything to clean up this house?" A real or perceived threat initiates a reaction in our bodies that limits our capacity to listen, talk, and handle conflict in a healthy way. When we let someone pull our trigger, our bodies prepare for action. We may get tunnel vision. This is known as escalation. Escalation often leads to a crisis or some type response to the trigger. When we feel threatened, it is not uncommon to have the desire to either fight, try and escape the threat, or simply freeze and shut down. This is the point where couples may be arguing with one another to get their point across or make sure they are heard. Or they may simply withdraw and let their differences fester to the point where they later explode or make choices that hurt the relationship. Usually, the crisis stage is followed by recovery and post-crisis. These are the processes of calming down and thinking about what was done or said during the crisis. Although this is a very common process, it is not the best way to deal with challenges. We are not recommending this process, but rather reviewing the various stages of a conflict or crisis. Manage tool number 2, How Our Bodies Respond to Stress, describes a simple activity you can do to demonstrate this process with clients. Also, manage tool number 3, Getting Worked Up, can be useful in helping your client recognize their triggers. You can pause this video to take a moment to review these tools. When you're ready to continue, press play to advance to the next slide. Take a look at the image on the screen. Where would it best be to intervene and stop normal conflict to prevent it from escalating into a crisis? It's best to stop this process early on. Reacting to triggers by letting the situation escalate and turn into a crisis is like starting to build a house and tearing the plumbing out every time you get angry. When someone pulls one of our triggers, we do not have to escalate the conflict. Individuals have the ability to choose to respond in a caring way instead of a crabby way. This is not easy, but there are skills you can teach to help couples halt this process. Before we review some of those skills, it's helpful to first help couples to understand signs of when their relationship may be in trouble. Our natural way of dealing with relationship conflict may involve the use of criticism, defensiveness, contempt, or stonewalling. But relationship expert John Gottman has found that these things signal serious relationship problems. If these things are present in our relationships, we need to make every effort to change and find healthier ways of reducing escalation and managing crisis in our relationships. Otherwise, they will signal the likely end of our relationship. These 4 areas will be discussed in more detail on the following slides. In relationships, requests are okay, but criticisms are not. So what's the difference between criticism and requesting someone to do something? Criticisms are more broad than requests. They involve adding negative words or blame to attack a partner's character or personality. For example, a request might be, "Will you please take the garbage out today?" Whereas a criticism might be, "Be sure and take the garbage out today. You forgot to do it last week, just like you forget everything else." The intent of a criticism is to make oneself right and the partner wrong. Criticisms often include generalizations like, "You always," "You never," or "Why can't you ever?" Defensiveness is a person's natural reaction to being attacked. Often defensiveness comes as a response to criticism. It's a way of warding off a perceived attack or trigger and saying, "The problem isn't me, it's you." When we are defensive, we often engage in cross-complaining. That's when we meet our partner's complaint with a complaint of our own and ignore what our partner said in the first place. For example, if our partner says, "Will you please pick up your socks? You are so messy," we might respond, "Look who's talking. You leave your stuff all over the dang house. Why don't you pick up something every once in a while?" When we're defensive, we may also engage in practices like starting to agree with our partners but then disagreeing, or repeating ourselves without paying attention to what our partners are really saying. Contempt often follows a partner's repeated attempts to get their partner to respond to criticism. Contempt is attacking a partner's sense of self and putting them down. It may include things like name-calling, rolling one's eyes, hostile humor, sarcasm, or mockery. Contempt is considered the most poisonous action in this cycle of negativity because it conveys disgust. Contempt leads to more conflict rather than reconciliation. Last, stonewalling is the process of withdrawing to avoid conflict. Partners may think they are trying to be neutral, but in actuality, stonewalling conveys disapproval, icy distance, separation, disconnection, and/or smugness. Research shows that 85% of the time, it happens to be males who use this strategy when conflict arises and they feel threatened. Many couples engage in some of these behaviors from time to time, but when they become a couple's regular way of interacting, it signals serious problems. Some might call stonewalling the whatever moment. When one partner just stops caring and checks out. In troubled marriages, one person often starts feeling divorced emotionally for several years before initiating divorce on paper. All couples have relationship problems that they have to work through, even the happiest couples. So now that we have reviewed how a relationship can become unhealthy and unstable, let's examine some proven strategies you can use to help couples manage conflict well. On the following slides, we'll talk a little bit more about the power of softening your startup, learning to make and receive repair attempts, soothing yourself and each other, searching for common ground, and showing acceptance and understanding. Discussions often end on the same note they begin, and when they start with a harsh startup, they are most likely to end up worse than they began. In fact, John Gottman's research shows that 96% of the time, one can predict a conversation's outcome in the first 3 minutes of dialogue. Remember, as mentioned earlier, by halting the process at the trigger, we can reduce the risk for escalation and crisis. One way to do this is to use soft startups. It helps to phrase statements in a way that doesn't feel like a demand or accusation, but does feel like an invitation to a stronger relationship. If a conversation begins with a harsh startup, it is best to stop, take a breath, start over. It is helpful to really own the message using phrases like, "I feel," and "I need." How might you soften the following harsh startup? "I need you to stop being lazy and help me get the kids ready for the babysitter so I can get to work on time. I can't afford to be late again. I need this job and we need the money." One example of a soft startup alternative might be, "I really appreciate the time you've been taking to parent our children. I believe they value having you in their life." A soft startup like this would allow for a request of additional help in getting the children to a child care, to be made without inviting defensiveness. One of the first things we learn about driving a car is how to stop the car by applying the brakes. Learning to apply the brakes in a relationship is called a repair attempt. They are used when a discussion starts off on the wrong foot or when one partner feels tension rising. Repair attempts help de-escalate the tension. When we offer a repair attempt, we are taking responsibility for part of the problem. Let's look at some common repair attempts. If we're looking for common ground, we might say, "We can tackle this together." "I see what you mean." "I see your point." We are both saying essentially the same thing. "I know this isn't your fault." Or, "Let's compromise." When we're sorry, we can say, "I didn't mean that. Can I take that back? Let me try again. I didn't think of that." Or, "Forgive me." If things are escalating, we might say, "We're off track," or "Let's take a break." John Gottman has said, what separates stable, emotionally intelligent marriages from others is not that their repair attempts are necessarily more skillful or better thought out, but that their repair attempts get through to their spouse. Repair attempts are simply bids to make things better and stop the runaway coaster we reviewed earlier. When one partner makes a repair attempt, the other partner's job is simply to try and accept it. When we feel flooded inside with all sorts of angry emotions and hormones, it is easy to feel overwhelmed physically and emotionally. When this happens, repair attempts will not work unless a person is really paying attention to what their partner is saying. When a person feels flooded, he or she needs at least 20 minutes to calm down. During this time, avoid negative thoughts and blame. For example, saying or thinking things like, "I don't have to take this anymore," or "Why is he or she always doing this?" Well, that won't help you calm down. Do something soothing and distracting, like listening to music, exercising, watching TV, talking to a friend. Another important part of soothing involves learning what triggers flooding in one's partner and avoiding those things. As mentioned earlier, finding common ground can be one way to apply the brakes to an argument. It's important to take our partner's preferences and opinions seriously. We can search for common ground by asking and answering the following types of questions. What do we agree about? What are the most important feelings here? How can we understand this situation or issue? How should our goals be accomplished? And what common goals do we have? Another way to manage relationship problems is through understanding. Acceptance and forgiveness lead to understanding in relationships. When we have a disagreement with our partner, we need to be willing to forgive one another and move on. We also need to be willing to think about and see things from our partner's point of view. Once we do this, it may provide great insight into why they have done or said the things they did. Most of us do things for reasons that make sense to us. If we don't understand why our partner has done something and we're annoyed with what they have done, we should consider this as an invitation to greater understanding. We all like being around people who are accepting, forgiving, and understanding of us. If we can do these things for our partner, it will greatly strengthen our relationship. This can be one of the most difficult aspects of relationships, but it often is the most important. As a cautionary note, if you're working with couples with a history of domestic violence, forgiveness is something that will take more time and effort to foster than you may be trained and qualified to address. For these couples, referral to counseling and other services will be important. Let's take a moment to consider how manage could be applied with a couple. If you have completed Know and Share, then you are already familiar with the Johnson family. If not, take a look at the family genogram on the slide and familiarize yourself with the family. Let's take a look at how Sean and Victoria handle conflict in their relationship. As you view the video clip, think about some of the concepts covered in this module, including triggers and how to handle conflict.
This is really not a good time.
What's going on? What's the matter?
Sean, he just stormed out of here.
He's not here right now.
No, he's not here right now.
Well, you look very upset.
Yeah, I am.
Oh boy, you want to tell me about it?
Sean has his friend Kenny, who just bought a motorcycle, along with the other guys. Now Sean's talking about buying a motorcycle. We don't have money to buy motorcycles. I'm doing everything I can to keep a roof over our heads, not to mention the things that the kids need. Why can't Sean see that? Seems like all he wants to do is hang out with his boys.
Money can create such conflict in relationships. Have you talked to Sean about it? How you want to spend money in the household?
Oh, we talk about it all the time. But it's not about the money. Sean doesn't need to be hanging out with these guys. You know, I've made an effort to not hang out with the same people, do things differently, even the way I spend my money now. I have priorities, and I'm tired of feeling like I'm the only one putting an effort into this relationship. Why can't Sean see that? Every time he hangs out with these boys of his, it just seems like they just end up getting into trouble. He just doesn't get it.
So you're still concerned about some of the choices that he's making, and you don't feel the choices are the best for this relationship, for you and Sean, for the children. Friends still seem to be an issue for you.
Yeah. Sean just thinks life is just this big old party and he can do whatever he wants to do.
And you all have been working so hard on the relationship. Are you getting discouraged at this point?
I've talked to Sean, but he gets angry, he storms out. What am I doing wrong? Seems like it's the same stuff over and over again.
You said that there were some things you wanted to share with Sean. You think this is a good time to have that discussion?
Well, Sean, lately I've been feeling like you're not putting any effort into making this work. I've been trying to get you to stay home more with me and the kids, do more with us, but it seems all you want to do is hang out with your friends.
What are you talking about? You do your thing, I do mine. That's how this works. I don't want to be cooped up around her all the time.
Sean, I'm not sure that's how Victoria sees it. I know you've both been working real hard on this relationship and trying to make better choices and better decisions and trying to build some skills around your relationship and how you can make things a little better. Certainly these conflicts are normal, but how you work them out is what makes a difference.
Look, I do spend time here, but sometimes I just need my own time to just, chill, hang with my boys. I don't know why she's got such a problem with how much time I spend with them. Look, I'm out of here.
Sean.
Sean, can you hang in here with us for a few more minutes? We're not trying to gang up on you. We're just trying to reach some kind of compromise.
Look, Victoria needs to understand my side of the situation just like I'm supposed to understand hers. I do spend time here. I'm able to do what I'm supposed to do in this house with the kids, but I need my own time too. What she said, be a man. As soon as she understands that, our relationship will get better.
No, what you need to understand is raising a family is a priority. You need to make sacrifices. Sean, I make sacrifices all the time. You need to do the same.
Well, both of you make some good points. And this kind of conflict, again, is normal in a relationship. It's how you resolve them. Sean, I think Victoria's really just concerned about some of the people that you hang around with and afraid that you might find yourself in trouble. And you've worked so hard on this relationship, and she has too. So she's really just wanting the best for you and what's best for the children. So she'd like to see you spend more time here at home and spend more family time. Does that sound like something that we can talk about and maybe reach a compromise on?
Sure.
Before Sean returned, Victoria shared a lot of frustration she has about him. The time he spends with his friends, how he spends money. After Sean returned, he shared his side of the situation. What do you think Victoria's triggers are? What do you think Sean's triggers are? What did you notice about how Sean and Victoria handle conflict? What did you think about how Angela handled the situation, both before and after Sean returned? How might you have handled it differently? Teaching and learning the skills reviewed in this module is not easy. In addition to the fact sheets and tools referenced earlier in this module, several other tools have been developed to help you teach these skills. If you haven't already taken a look at the other tools and fact sheets in this module, take some time now to do so. Think about Sean and Victoria, as well as clients with whom you work. How could you use these tools to support the clients you serve? To view these tools, pause the video now and click the links on the website below. When you are ready, press play to continue. Although conflict is a normal and inevitable part of all couple relationships, there are things we can do and ways we can act to increase our chances of having a strong and healthy relationship. In summary, conflict can be managed effectively by understanding there cannot always be agreement. Sometimes it is best to agree to disagree. Sharing concerns in a calm, respectful tone with a soft startup. Avoiding criticism and defensiveness. Stopping conflicts before it escalates to flooding and contempt and stonewalling. Taking time-outs when things are getting heated or off track, but coming back to talk. Soothing and supporting each other. Being open to forgiveness, and of course, above all, maintaining emotional and physical safety. Congratulations! You have completed Module 7, Manage. Please proceed with Module 8, Connect, which highlights the importance of engaging in positive social networks to help support healthy relationships. If you have any questions about this training or these modules, contact Dr. David Schramm from the University of Missouri or Dr. Ted Futris from the University of Georgia. Their contact information is provided on the right panel.